Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, and welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. I hope yours are well. Been another interesting week. Our members of Parliament and the Scottish Parliament get back to work, giving us some more stuff to discuss. But let's start right away today. The big news that's been going on, why it's the big news, I don't know. Firstly, let me say, Charlie Kirk, terrible young man, young family, not even at school, the kids. I disagree completely with his politics. I have absolutely no truck, but I don't, it's appalling that someone can't. I defended anyone's right to have their view, and that he was, assassinated, and that's the only word we can use, for whatever reason, by whoever, is appalling, and it's terrible. However, I would suggest respectfully that up until 2 days ago, the majority of people in the United Kingdom who are not on social media had never heard of Charlie Kirk. And the European Parliament having a minute's silence for Charlie Kirk and all that. I didn't see them having a minute's silence every day for the 200 or 300 people that are dying in Gaza, or the thousands of people that are dying in the Sudan and in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and in Ukraine. But this one right-wing commentator in America, suddenly it's taken over our screens. Do you not think it's been a bit of an overkill? No pun intended, Lloyd?
I'm absolutely shocked by the fact that our mainstream media have made for 2 days now is the most important story. That says to me that in real terms they want us not looking at other things. But as you said, it's not possible to accept that a couple of hundred women and children can be killed in a morning in Gaza, but the death of one friend of President Donald Trump is assassinated, and that dominates the news agenda across the world. Frankly, I think it's time for us not to talk about it, because ordinary people in this country have their own struggles. Ordinary people in this country, many people will have lost a family member over the past few days to illness or to accident and things, but we never ever cover those stories. So the less. I'm very sorry for his family, and I think it's a terrible thing that happened, but it's really got absolutely nothing to do with the good people of Scotland.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if any of the rest of the guys want to make a comment on it, because when you go, Phil.
I hear what Lloyd says, and yeah, we don't want to be talking about it, but we need to understand what's going on here as briefly as possible. What we have to remember here is that Charlie Kirk was a product of the system that is designed to continue Western hegemony for the benefit of the 1%, because just as we have in the past, the people of the West no longer benefit from it, from this empires that we've created, as the 1% asset strip the society we helped build. How so? Well, firstly, note that US citizens stopped becoming better off in 1978 and have been getting less well off every year since. George Carlin, the American Dream, can explain that to you. And if you don't believe me, or try Michael Hudson, if you have a good understanding of economics and geopolitics. And this applies to across the West, and G7 in particular. Empires behave this way. It was ever thus. Remember the Great British Empire? Who benefits? Certainly not us. Certainly not as vassal states. Not the working people. As I often say, quoting to myself, our forefathers went up the chimneys, down the mines, worked the dark satanic mills, and over the top in our tens of thousands to create this hegemony, this wealth, all the time while living in abject poverty. So don't romanticize about the empire, UK or American. Charlie Kirk's murder is not to be celebrated. He is a tool of the establishment. His murder was number 18,000 and something in the US this year. Yeah, no flags.
200 a day or something like
that. Over 18,000. He's 18,351 this year. Shot and murdered in America. Lots of guns equals lots of shootings, right? Duh. And the flags fly at half-mast for him. He's more useful to the establishment dead than alive. That's the interesting part here. The Western media, I said, will hold him, and they have held him up as a martyr for so-called Western values, supporting Israel and denigrating leftist radicals. This is being used as an excuse for the further destruction of what little rights and freedoms of speech that you and I have. The right wing seek further surveillance laws and control over what we say and do as individuals. One more thing. There are similarities here with the Trump alleged assassination when his ear was allegedly hit. The bullet hit Charlie Kirk's bulletproof vest, which he was told to wear, before ricocheting, up and killing him in his neck. I would not rule out a planned, attempted, and failed assassination attempt. But the only thing I believe he did to perhaps persuade the establishment he worked for to kill him was his insistence that the Epstein files needed released. Make of all of this what you will, but we got to ask ourselves, what is freedom, and what are you prepared to do to ensure the people of Scotland get it, and soon as possible?
Starting to be a bit of a conspiracy theory there, Mr. Boswell. We'll be getting the letters in. Alan,
yeah,
your thoughts on all this?
My condolences go out to his family as well, but also to the family of the children who were shot at the school at the same time. There was another school incident. And the problem here isn't about freedom of speech. It's about bad gun control in America. And Charlie himself demanded that people had the rights to carry guns. What they should be doing is looking at the mental health system in their country. My fear just now is the young man who's been charged with this assassination, he's already been found guilty. There's no way he can get a fair trial in America, because every single one of the establishment have declared him guilty. And it is most likely that he will get the death penalty, which he then has no right to speak afterwards. The secrets will go to the grave with him.
Yeah. Actually, the president was on a Fox program and said, "Yeah, we've got the guy in you, and I think he should get the death penalty." That's ridiculous that saying things like that. But the other thing is that the people now, so a lot of them are saying, "Oh, the far right," are saying, "Oh, these far left, we've got to stop. You've got to stop calling us far right, because this is what happens when you say far right and we're extremists." And then they say the far left extremists. I mean, in America during the election for the president, they were labeling Kamala Harris as a communist. I mean, it's hysterical. It's like calling Liz Truss a communist and Biden as a socialist. It's now, that's Lloyd found itself across the pond now. We always imitate what's going to. I hope we don't going to start imitating assassinating people at political meetings, public meetings, especially as we're going to be doing a few soon. But this labeling everyone far left, the far left, there is no such thing as a far left or a left at the moment in the UK.
These are convenient labels for those who want to draw attention away from the actual problems that are happening in the country. In real terms, people are living in poverty. We have, in our country particularly, people are living in poverty who should not be living in poverty, because we are a rich country, rich in resources, both human and natural. We have one of the highest numbers of drug deaths of any country in Europe. That should not be happening. To me, these are the things that they don't want to talk about. I find the characterization of far right and far left has mutated through my lifetime, because I find it quite extraordinary, the authoritarianism that exists on what is called the progressive left in Scotland, that supports the idea of men can be women and women can be men, and denies science. Now, the basis of socialism, as I understood it, which was of the left, was scientific and had a respect for science and the realities of science. And more importantly, had a very, very clear conviction that the purpose of politics was to lift up the many, not to look after the few. And unfortunately, everything has been turned on its head, and the left, or the progressive left, as I understand it to be, now believes in the lifting up of the few and the suffering of the many. And that, to me, it negates the term right and left completely.
You're on mute, Roddy.
Oh, myself a quid. I'm saying this left and right. Have you noticed this thing sort of coming into the discourse?
Yes, it is there, but that's because it's a diversion. As we've referred to earlier, when somebody or when the media generally are publicising one particular matter over another, it's because they don't want you to see what's going on somewhere else. And what I think is really important from a Scottish perspective is to put this in context. The context is that every political party is failing the people of Scotland every single day with most of what they do. And one of the starkest reminders of that is this, that life expectancy in Scotland is the lowest in Western Europe. How can that be? It's lower at the moment than it was before the COVID pandemic. And it arises primarily because of poverty. And poverty is the one thing that the Scottish Government is not addressing in the fashion that it should. And it's the greatest driver of a desire for independence and the use of full economic levers to relieve that position. I mean, one thing that's happening here just now is that there is talk that the Clackmannanshire annex of Forth Valley College will be closing, and that would leave Clackmannanshire without a college, without a further education facility. And the notion is that those who would go to study there can just as easily go off and study in either Falkirk or Stirling. This is utterly and completely wrong. It's pathetic, it's wrong-minded, it's badly thought out. And you'll probably find that in due course, our MSP, Keith Brown, will ride to the rescue on a white charger and he'll keep the college open for another wee while. But it's these sorts of things that need to be addressed by politicians that have a heart and that have a mind and have a brain and have a 50-year plan for Scotland, not repeated sticking plasters over and over again. And that's where this talk of left, right, centre, fascist, Nazi, whatever the heck it is, it's all done to keep you talking rather than taking action. And people need to educate themselves as to what is actually going on in the country and what we could do were we independent, and crucially, had we the right type of MSP sitting in that parliament, had we people that were in touch with reality, in touch with the hundreds of thousands that are scrimping and saving, that are doing without, that are having to do what I've spoken about for years, go to food banks, baby banks, school clothing banks, because there is no better alternative. All of these things should be consigned to the past, and they will be when we're independent, but it's not going to happen as if by magic. And it's certainly not going to happen when the politicians that we have just now are utterly self-centred, and what they do consistently is put party before country.
They do. But poverty is going to be a thing of the past very soon, Phil, because this week, as we announced last week, we've got a new Governor-General, Wee Doogie.
Now are only 3 or 4 seats away from a majority at Holyrood. If they get that, they say that is a mandate for another independence referendum. Is it?
So to continue the earlier football analogy, Martin, I'm not really going to engage in post-match analysis when the game hasn't even begun, never mind finished.
But
I'm not really interested in anticipating our defeat as Scottish Labour. I'm way more interested in contributing to Scottish Labour's victory. Okay. And that's what each and every one of my colleagues as Scottish representatives at Westminster for the Labour Party, and indeed my friends and colleagues in Holyrood, are determined to be doing in the months between now and May.
The Prime Minister has ruled this out. He said, I'm not interested in referendums at the moment. Whatever happens, doesn't matter. You're not getting one after the next election. I paraphrase, but that's the message. Is he right? Is that where you are on this?
Forgive me, I just lost you for a second in terms of the question. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, I was saying Sir Keir Starmer has been reasonably clear on this. He said it doesn't matter what happens at the election. I'm not interested in referendums. It's not a priority, and you're not getting one after the election next year. Is he right on that? Is that, broadly speaking, where you are on this?
Honestly, when Keir was in Glasgow this week confirming shipbuilding in the Clyde for 15 years and he was asked that question, I think he was speaking for many and many of us right across Scotland, east, west, north, south, who really don't see independence as a priority. When I saw yet another document on independence produced by the Scottish Government in recent days, I thought this is really a core vote strategy from a party that doesn't want to talk about health, about education, about ferries, about justice, about
He just absolutely deflects, doesn't he? He shows his arrogance and contempt for the democratic will of the people. And the most annoying thing in this, Phil, is the SNP are sticking by their Section 30 cap in hand strategy. That tells you that what the reply is going to be.
Yeah, we know what it is, and the problem with that this is a veteran of Labour, and he obviously is saying the return to the Scotland office is a real honour. He replaces the sacked Ian Murray as Secretary of State for Scotland. Doogie has described his reappointment, the Scottish Secretary, almost 20 years on from the first time in the role, as a real honour. Of course, he's Lothian East MP, who was Trade Minister before his move to the Scottish office, replaces Murray, who was sacked as part of the Prime Minister's reshuffle. Murray, the longest-serving MP for Edinburgh South, said he was hugely disappointed to lose his place in government. Boo-hoo. The thing with this guy, the thing with wee Dougie Alexander is he will do exactly as he's told. Admittedly, he's a wee bit more polished than Murray, who, let's be honest, he was only Secretary of State because at one time he was the only option. It's more of the same. It doesn't matter what clown you've got, Murray or Alexander, same result. And if SNP continue with their strategy, they're doomed to fail and they're part of the problem.
Yeah, there's irony of all ironies, Alan. This all started because Angela Rayner didn't pay the right tax. She was fiddling her expenses and not paying the right tax in her house. But if we all cast our minds back when the expenses scandal came, wee Dougie had to repay £50,000. Not £50, £50,000 of fiddled expenses. But he's like Mr. Mandelson, he just reappears. They just right under the carpet. It's ridiculous.
That's how Labour operate, though, isn't it? We Dougie getting his rewards. I mean, he's a veteran of New Labour. And remember, this is a man who voted for the Iraq War, the illegal Iraq War, based on extremely dodgy dossiers. He's a man who stood on a platform of no tuition fees. And as soon as he became an MP, voted for tuition fees. He's a man who is also responsible for crippling the Scottish economy, and in particular local councils, because he helped bring in the PFI that we are still paying to this day. We are closing down facilities within local communities to pay the debt he gave us. But it may be a little bit of an omen, because Dougie came around at the time where the Scottish Parliament was formed. He was also involved in manipulating the voting system to ensure the SNP could not get a majority, although they beat that once. But him and the Liberal Democrats and the rest of the Labour Party in Britain worked on a voting system to stop people getting a majority. And that's what the Scottish people have got to look at. But in 2013, he was put in charge from Miliband of the general election campaign in Scotland for the 2015 election. He lost all but one MP in Scotland, including himself, to a 20-year-old Mary Black who turned out to be a woke nutter. That's how good his strategy is. So, Dougie, welcome back to Scotland, because you're about to see the death of the devolved Parliament and the rebirth of the independent Scottish Parliament through Liberate Scotland.
Yeah, well said. While this strategy's on, something I also read there this week, that not one Labour MSP or MPs congratulated him on his promotion. And just as we said last week, I bet he was, and they figured it came, him and Sarwar, and we're coming to you soon, Annis, don't you worry, son, we've not forgotten you. But here's another, while the SNP are continuing with, give us a big win, to hell with all the other parties, SNP 1-2, they'll roll over. Here's the cervix man.
What is the Labour Party's position on a second independence referendum? Can you rule it out at any point for the next kind of 10 years? Would it be something that you could countenance?
Categorically. We are a unionist party. We believe in the union. We can rule that out categorically.
Is the branch office in Glasgow going to be saying exactly the same thing?
Yes.
The bit I love was when he said the branch office economy, he didn't interrupt him, Lloyd. It's a fact.
We're living in interesting times. Douglas Alexander, like Dracula from his coffin, arises again and comes home to Scotland. It's interesting to listen to what Alan had to say. And I was surprised he didn't mention that Dundee University, I believe, has a huge black hole in its finances, courtesy of Douglas's sister, the former leader of the Labour Party in Scotland, Wendy Alexander. She was another one who was going to ride to the rescue. Douglas Alexander is an old hand. He even pulled that, I can't quite hear you, I didn't catch that, which is utter and complete rubbish, which when you want to kill time in an interview, that's what you do. Douglas Alexander is not liked within his own party. A generation of Labour members has disappeared since Douglas was last here. I think he brings fear to the table in terms of those Scottish members that are currently serving in Keir Starmer's cabinet, particularly the energy minister. But what's really going on here is this is shoring up a situation which is spinning madly out of control for the Labour Party. I was amazed last night to hear Barry Gardiner, a Labour Party loyalist, a Scotsman who is a member of Parliament for a constituency in England, telling the world that the Labour Party is fragmenting into factions at the moment, that it takes a backbencher 6 weeks to be able to get a 5-minute meeting with Keir Starmer, and that the party either has to take control of itself away from the power of those in number 10 Downing Street who are not elected and return the power in the Labour Party to its own membership. Echoes of the SNP, I thought, in some of the things Barry Gardiner was saying. But clearly, the Labour Party is in a very, very difficult situation at the moment. It's a situation which will affect us in Scotland, because when the Labour Party's in trouble, Scotland always suffers. And if you put Douglas Alexander in front of, particularly with an election coming next year, where the Labour Party will desperately want to retain what little they have within the Scottish Parliament, I think we can see there will be more interference by the Scotland office, or the Scottish office as it's known, with politics in Scotland to a far greater degree than there has been for a while. I find it interesting that Douglas Alexander was shifted into the position during in the week running up to the Mandelson disaster, which clearly those in the know in the Labour Party knew was coming down the track, because in reality Douglas Alexander and his rise to fame and his political career actually runs in parallel with Peter Mandelson. They were all part of the great Blairite purge of the Labour Party and the creation of New Labour in the late 90s, and part of that 1997 group that ran the country very badly and took us into illegal wars. But what I concern myself with is the Scottish National Party do not have the ability at the moment to counter Douglas Alexander. I mean, even this week when John Swinney went to meet with President Trump to plea for a change in the tariffs on Scotch whisky, when he returned and gave his press conference, John Swinney made it clear that this was that nothing had actually been directly achieved by the meeting with Trump, that he'd elucidated to him some things that Trump didn't know about the Scottish whisky industry, but that ultimately any decision about tariffs and any change in the tariffs will have to be negotiated by the British government and not by the Scottish government. An effective admission of failure. But what he also, I think, is flagging up is the fact that the Scottish National Party is going to go into the next year's election on the basis of beating the Labour Party over the head over whisky tariffs and a number of other issues, rather than standing on a positive programme, a positive programme for independence, or even on a positive programme of what they plan to do were they elected again. But then again, the difficulty they have in doing that is, over the past 10 years, very, very little positive has been done by the Scottish National Party for the good people of Scotland.
Correct. It also shows that we are a colony when we've got our biggest export, the UK's biggest export apart from weapons, and we have no say over it, and it's meant to be 100% Scottish. But we Doogie, even the Record, and Paul Hutchin, a die-hard supporter, gave us the article. It was triggered by a snub by Ian Murray. He decided he preferred to be in London rather than go to an away day for Anas Sarwar. And the Anas Sarwar and a few others were involved in having him removed. So typically Labour, is it not, Eva?
It's not just Labour that behave like that, it's the whole damn lot of them, because they're all jockeying for position all the time, sooking into whoever they think is the one that's on the rise, and it's about personal reward. It's generally not about country before party. What I find particularly interesting, albeit galling about this, is Douglas Alexander is, as Lloyd has narrated, he's returned from the past with a very flawed and very checkered record that includes having studied in Canada, having worked in America, obviously come very heavily under the American influence. He worked for Michael Dukakis in his campaign, and he's absolutely Washington's man in Westminster. What he's not is Scotland's man in Westminster, because everything that he will do will be directed towards Westminster interests and furthering Westminster's interests and furthering the special relationship between the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland and the USA. What it will not be about is promoting the needs and the interests of the people of Scotland. Also, of note, you'll remember that we used to talk about the Labour MPs who represented Scotland or pretended that they did as the feeble 50. Well, what we're able to do now is there are 8 MPs from Scotland that are now government ministers. So they've now got a new nickname, which is the Hateful Eight. And they will live up to that, because over the course of the next couple of years, you will not see any single one of them do anything for the positive benefit of the people of Scotland. It will all be about the benefits that there are for the Labour Party in maintaining power, and you'll continue to see them falling in and falling out with each other, and they'll care not a jot for the impact that their policies and their absolutely chaotic modes of operating have on the people of this country. This is why we need to be governed by politicians whose primary concern is promoting the needs and the interests of the people of this country and nowhere else. That's how we're going to address, and it's the only way we will address poverty or the deindustrialisation of our country, which we need to reverse immediately. I spoke earlier about the college in Alloa. Obviously, we live close to Grangemouth. We know what happened there unnecessarily. And you did not see Douglas Alexander or any of those around him lift a finger to do anything to try to keep the Grangemouth refinery functioning, because it suits their purpose for Scotland not to have a functioning refinery. And what you saw was that my own MP, Brian Leishman, he did try. He's the man who's currently suspended. He's suspended for speaking out, when actually in some respects he deserves a medal for shouting about Grangemouth, because at times he was the only one in Labour who seemed so to do. So this is not a good day for Scotland in the context of rewards that Scotland might expect to get, having somebody like Douglas Alexander in charge. But it might become a good day if people pay attention to what he could have done and hasn't done relative to, for example, energy prices, the cost of living crisis, benefits issues, including the bedroom tax and the 2-child rape clause. He has opportunities in abundance to make Scotland a better place. He will take none of them. And that's the cost of the union.
Here it is. As the clock's ticking on, into two things, Phil, also, and Lloyd touched on it, was the farce. I mean, Labour are in a mess. I saw an opinion poll this week where they're under 20% in the polls. But this carry on, Mr. Mandelson, the ambassador, having to be sacked. I mean, the word comes through that apparently MI6 warned the Prime Minister, don't appoint this guy, there's too much baggage there. But he went ahead and did it anyway. And it's turned into another own goal for the Labour Party. You're on mute, mate.
Yes, I know. I saw that. I just couldn't get to the button quick enough. Peter Mandelson has never been far from controversy and scandal. His career has been defined by comebacks, you could say. So Mandelson was appointed by Sir Keir Starmer, opposite of Keir Hardie, incidentally. Keir Hardie, not typically a unionist calf dopper, but he was the ambassador to the US, was the first political one in decades, coinciding with Donald Trump's return to the White House for very good reason. Now, Lord Mandelson, of the same ilk, began his political career as Labour's communications director in 1985. Before becoming an MP in 1992, he served under Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, but resigned twice in 1998 and 2001. But the UK's top diplomat in Washington has now been sacked over his links to what? Paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein. But Mandelson himself broke his silence over this unfolding scandal around his ties to Jeffrey Epstein, warning, check this out, there are more very embarrassing revelations to come after it was revealed he maintained ties with Epstein after Epstein was jailed for child sex offences. It continues, we are run by shysters who are in the hands of the establishment, who are all being blackmailed, who are all being controlled, who will do what they're told, by the Zionist lobby and by those who would keep us on our knees. It's disgusting.
Yeah. Labour are imploding, Alan. I mean, if ever there was a time that we should unite the movement, the British Union's imploding, Labour's imploding, and we're not uniting.
Yeah, well, I mean, in fairness to Starmer, I think when he appointed Mandelson, he actually read it as Mandela's son. So he thought he was getting somebody good up there. I mean, you know how incompetent that man is. But yeah, I mean, Labour are they are running the English Parliament and doing what they can to protect the City of London. And it comes back to this left-right thing, which is non-existent. Because we are being accused of being far left simply because we believe no one should be living in poverty. No one should be on the streets homeless. No one should be getting bombs or weapons from this country to go and kill children and women. And because of that, we are classed as being ultra-left. While these people on the right are being extremely greedy. They are taking everything away from the most vulnerable people in our society. The time is ripe for the independence movement to come on board and start attacking Labour when they're weak. But unfortunately, the largest party, the SNP, are sitting on their hands, not wanting to rock the boat. Do they think this will give them a Section 30? Because it won't. We have to drop this nonsense of a Section 30. We have to get politicians that will defend the rights of every single Scot. And most importantly, those who cannot defend themselves, the poorest and the most vulnerable in our country. And the Section 30, you could ram it where the sun don't shine, because we're not looking for a referendum. 2026 is a democratic election. The people of Scotland can show their democratic will to be independent. And the more Liberate Scotland candidates that will be in there, the more easier it will be for us. Because I've said it before, we have a bill written. We will announce this before the election, because we are taking the fight directly to Westminster. We are not going on our knees. We are not doffing our caps. We are telling them what the Scottish people want, and we will make sure we take it.
Thanks, Alan, for that. But, you know, all sorts of appointments. Our new Green leadership had a video. I don't know if you saw it, Lloyd. I'll give you the pleasure of it. I've got to say, there's not many things that shock me in politics, but when you think, this is one of the best shooting in the foots I've ever seen. Up you go.
They're all serious efforts at climate action that no one else was going to do.
And there will already be people out there who do vote for us, but don't necessarily support independence. If you've ever seen some of the ballot papers, particularly at council elections that have been cast, that have been a unionist party, then us, it's quite, people are more nuanced than you think.
What if I am that voter who is absolutely committed to the climate cause, but I don't believe that trans women are women, and I don't believe what your party is doing with gender recognition reform? Do I have a home in your party then, or is that a red line?
I think that's probably a red line for us trans people.
So, red line, if you don't believe in the trans ideology, the Green Party leaders telling you they don't want your vote, they don't want you in their party, they don't want anything about you. I mean, absolute insanity. Politically suicide.
The Scottish Green Party never fails to amaze, does it? I find it absolutely incredible that people who are currently sitting members of the Scottish Parliament understand so little about politics that they've effectively just said, don't vote for me, to the whole country. Now, any party any political party that is not prepared to operate as a broad church of some form, within limited boundaries, is on the highway to hell. But then again, maybe this is just what the Green Party has been about for a little while. They're an irritation in Scottish politics. They claim to be pro-independence, but they never do anything to support the independence movement. They claim to be environmentalists, but they do very little to project that policy. This week's piece of genius from the Green Party in the Scottish Parliament was to institute a ban on greyhound racing. Oddly enough, in a country that currently does not have a greyhound racing track, because the last one in Thornton and Fife closed down 7 months ago. But this is these are the focus. It's nonsense, and I really wish, I really do wish, that people would look at what the Green Party say and not just what the colour is. Because so many votes, and I know this for having been at electoral counts, so many votes for the Green Party come from people who think green is virtuous, therefore I will vote for it. It also, particularly here in Edinburgh, is a convenient vote for the English diaspora that is now living in our city, who will not vote for any party that even hints at support for independence, like the SNP, but they will vote for the Green Party because it makes them feel good about themselves. The tragedy here, though, is that these two leaders were elected on an electorate of less than 300 people in total. The absolute number of people who voted for the joint leadership also is a virtual signalling nonsense as well. I mean, how does that work? But the fact that a political party that is given a platform in Scotland by the mainstream media as if it's of importance and that it has true relevance, based on a very small number of members of the Scottish Parliament and nothing much more than that. Its membership, its own membership, wouldn't even come out and vote in its own election. I think it was around about 18% of their actual membership took part in the leadership election. Now, what that says to me is that the democracy of the Green Party is a fallacy, and that their contribution to the body politic in Scotland is of no relevance whatsoever. The tragedy is that people will continue to vote for them on the basis that believing they are something that they are not. But if people pay attention to that particular interview, where effectively the leaders of the Scottish Green Party told the electorate of Scotland that if you believe in biological science, they do not want your vote. Well, isn't environmentalism based on concepts of science? But suddenly now we have a political party that says that biological science, as perceived by humanity, is of no relevance whatsoever. What utter hypocrisy, and words fail me at the fact that they didn't realise how stupid they sound.
No. I mean, I can honestly say if King Billy Boyne from Larkhall wanted to vote for independence, I would welcome the said King Billy and drive him to the polling station if need be. Eva, you're one of the 52% of women, the majority in this country. Will you be voting for the Greens?
What do you think? No, green, well named, green as grass in these instances. And as Lloyd said, they couldn't encourage their own members to come out and vote in the leadership election. And now they've gone one further by actively promoting that nobody should vote for them if they believe that a trans woman is a man, which is fact, and it's also the law. And in terms of almost turkeys voting for Christmas, the SNP have got some explaining to do if they don't accept the amendment that their group of rebels has now proposed for their conference. I think it's a 13-point document, and in essence what it suggests is that we have the approach to the Holyrood election that we in Liberate Scotland have set out, and Alan was talking about earlier. So that amendment's on the table. What it says is that we should use next year's election as, in essence, a plebiscite. Unlike a standalone referendum, this would be a plebiscite election. We could win regional seats in the current Scottish Parliament. A plebiscite is a right to choose. Unlike John Swinney's resolution, which is both votes SNP, and we'll go with the begging bowl to Westminster again, because of course John has no plan for what happens after the Section 30 is ignored and turned down and refused yet again. So I'm really hoping that these rebels within the SNP managed to get their amendment debated at conference. I really hope very much that the amendment is passed, because that would be a very important precursor to a real joined up cooperative independence campaign where all parties and no parties can get together and have a sensible but very managed strategy to regain independence next year. It is within our grasp. If common sense prevails and if people put country before party, something that those Green leaders seem incapable of doing, by the way. So here's hoping the rebels are able to address their conference, but if they're not, because the amendment is rejected by the SNP conference committee, then every single one of those rebels and their supporters are welcome to liberate Scotland with open arms. Because if you can't beat us, come and join us, because Liberate Scotland is an unbeatable movement, provided that those who are involved in it understand completely that it's about putting country before party, independence, nothing less. That's where we should be looking every single day from now until the election, to be getting that managed, organised system in place, and the support would be overwhelming. So if there's any of those rebels that feel down and they want to talk, lift the phone. We're here.
Absolutely. You've been in politics for a while, Phil. Have you ever heard such political suicide as the Greens? We don't want your vote if you don't believe in this.
No. Well, actually, they actually quite regularly come out with pish like this. It's really not a surprise in some respect, because this is obviously Ross Greer, the co-leader, with his partner in crime. This new strategy, the big one for me, is the strategy for independence to rival John Swinney's dead end plans. Because it's related to this pish they come out with. The political strategy that he came out with and put forward would test the limits of devolution while building public support for Scotland leaving the UK. Sound familiar? Greer described his plan as a serious alternative to the one previously announced by John Swinney. And this is in July. The SNP leader set out a renewed independence strategy, renewed my arse, in a three-pronged approach. We all know about it. Building record-high public support for Indy, pressurising Westminster to allow a second referendum, aye right, and winning an emphatic SNP majority. Delusional. And Greer's strategy, like his previous one, would see electing a majority of pro-independence SNPs of any party as a prerequisite for independence. So in one sense, you cannot argue with the principle set out by the Greens here. A pro-Indy majority is correct. But what will kill it, as it has before, and just look, read, pay attention. What killed it before is the Greens and the SNP's bam-pot policies on economics, energy and wokeism. What we need are level heads forcing SNP to take our independence and scupper the SNP's deliberate, divisive policies that split the independence movement. And the Greens and the SNP is more of the same. These bam-pots cannot be in control of our future. If they do so, we're doomed. Doomed, I tell you.
The fact is, Alan, for the last 5 years, the Greens have said nothing on independence apart from Slater saying, independence isn't a red line for us. I don't remember them doing it. But now, as we get nearer to the Holyrood election, suddenly they found their independence credentials. Warm your heart.
Yeah, remember when the Greens were the cuddly wee hippies with the sandals?
Mm-hmm.
They're now the furries who want to manipulate our children into believing they're against nature, to be honest with you. The Greens used to be the party of nature. Now they are deliberately trying to break the laws of nature, which is an impossibility. The Greens have never, ever really been a pro-independence party. And the woman said it herself. It's amazing how many unionists vote for them on the second vote. That's because you're a safe vote for a unionist. And the independence movement must see that. The Green vote is a safe vote for unionists. Yeah. So think very carefully before you vote Green. Some people within the movement are saying, but they've done such a great work on Flamingo Land. And that's true. a broken clock's right twice. But ask yourself one question, because you said that this is a red line. If it was a trans land doing exactly the same thing, but calling itself a trans land, would they be objecting to it? Because that seems to be their priority, not environment, not Scottish independence. They are a bunch of woke nutters. I mean, it's just a pity the raving loony party didn't copyright their policies, because the Greens would be no longer. They are just a bunch of nutters, and they should be wiped out of Scotland by the independence movement. They are not our friends. They've never been our friends. They are the unionists' dream.
Yeah, they are indeed. But the one thing to consider, what we were talking about early, the very first item, was how the media, all the focus had been on Charlie Kirk's terrible assassination. But what they've also shown a lot for now worry about is this guy Polanski, who's taken over down the Greens in England and Wales. He's getting a lot of mileage, Lloyd, from the English media. And then one of them, which brings me nicely on, nice bit of segue into it, where the Green Party leader called for the Israeli president, who visited this week, should be arrested and taken into custody. So he's getting the publicity. That will help the Greens in Scotland.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the case. But if people were actually looking clearly at the Greens in Scotland, they would see that they have little or nothing in common with Mr. Polanski, except his support of trans rights. Now, Polanski is an excellent media operator, but that always makes the bells start ringing for me, because if you're too polished, too clever, and you've already got the lines worked out, then that means that you've been thinking about wanting power for rather a long time. And I abhor those who seek and want power for power's sake, and Mr. Polanski clearly does. I think he's convenient for the media because he talks well. He's a posh boy. That's a reality as well. But on this one thing, I have to agree with him. And to some degree, it was quite brave of the leader of the Green. Well, not that brave, because he's got nothing to lose here. It's seeking votes from Jeremy Corbyn's party for the Green Party, and he's seeking votes from George Galloway's the Workers' Party of Britain by jumping on the Palestine issue and jumping on that issue, which a lot of Green Party members in England have been very supportive of the Palestinian movement. And to some, but all I see here is political opportunism. But in essence, he is absolutely correct. The fact that Herzog was not arrested when he is the head of state of a country which is currently massacring people who in legal terms are actually under their custodianship because they are the illegal occupiers. It is their responsibility in international law to preserve the lives of those that they occupy, but instead they're murdering them in their thousands. Now, the fact that the British government took no action against Mr. Herzog, I am utterly and completely disgusted by, but not in the least surprised, because I think there is no question that at the moment, the British Labour Party, and very specifically this current Labour government, is owned by Tel Aviv, is owned by the Zionist lobby. I would go as far as to say that I believe that Keir Starmer's rise and the destruction of Jeremy Corbyn was actually manipulated, controlled and operated by the Israelis to preserve themselves. Their first line of defence is attack. If you're likely to come under political attack, as they would have been had Jeremy Corbyn remained the leader of the Labour Party, then it's historically what the Israelis do. They take you out before they have to actually fight you in a physical sense. And every action that Keir Starmer's government has made, with the exception of getting rid of the Zionist Mandelson, every action has been totally and completely supportive of the behaviour of Netanyahu's Zionist government in Israel. So I see in Mr. Polanski's statement political opportunism, but I have to agree with the sentiments that he has. But I think also it's time for him, because he knows as well as I know that there is more to the British government's failure to arrest President Herzog than simply their wish to maintain relationships with America and Tel Aviv. I think it's a deliberate attempt to undermine international law. And that coming from a so-called human rights lawyer like Keir Starmer, I find deeply disturbing. And as Phil referred to earlier on, it is a warning to all of us that if they are prepared to flout international law in this manner, if they are prepared, in actual fact, to close down with the banning of Palestine action, close down protest and arrest people for protest, then that old Reverend Bonhoeffer statement comes to mind, when is it that they come for us?
Yeah. Just this, because on the Herzog, I just want to put this up. You all know it, you've all heard this 1,000 times. Whoops, from Orwell. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. George Orwell's famous quote from 1984. This week, we were actually told to do that, to ignore what we're seeing and hearing, Eva. When the British government told us there is no genocide going on in Palestine, that's effectively what they're telling us. Don't believe your own eyes and ears.
What I find absolutely distressing and completely outrageous about all of this, and I include in it the Charlie Kirk publicity as well, is that what you're not seeing when you turn on your telly is what you can see on social media, including the doctors who have spoken about what they've had to deal with in Gaza. And specifically, the thing that I found extremely chilling was that there seems to be a concerted effort by the Israeli army, the Israeli Defence Force, to target certain parts of the body on certain days. So doctors realised that there would be days when folk were coming in with predominantly injuries to their legs, or then it was predominantly the abdomen or the head or the chest. And on one particular day, or a series of days, it was young men who'd been shot in the testicles. And there's something so incredibly and utterly warped that they're so organised in what they do. So it's abundantly clear to the whole world that it's a genocide. I can't understand for the life of me what the motivation of the UK, or indeed any of the other countries that have failed to call it that so far. The motivation can only be a deliberate attempt to keep in with the Israelis, either because it's money, or because they are controlled, or because they know that the Israelis have something on them as individuals that they don't want to be exposed. There is no other logical or humanitarian explanation for any of that. And what I say doesn't make me anti-Semitic, and it doesn't make me hate the people of Israel, because there are obviously faults, very serious faults, and very serious behaviour which is criminal on all sides. That's what happens when you're at war. So the Israeli leaders should not stand alone if they eventually go on trial. There will be leaders from other countries and other factions that ought to go on trial too. So I'm not selecting any one particular person out for that. But when you look back at what we've seen in our lifetime, and you understand that there is every reason why Tony Blair should have stood in The Hague, and you can't understand why he never did, then you understand forever that there are so many machinations and so much going on in the background that in the end, the people in power care only for themselves and not a jot for the ordinary people and the ordinary lives of any citizen of any nation anywhere on the planet.
It's true. They're asking us to believe the unbelievable, Phil. And even when all this is going on, and we notice Starmer literally rolled out the red carpet for the Irishman who's the president of Israel, Herzog. It shames us. It shamed me to think that we're, whether I like it or not, I'm still a British citizen at the moment, and our government are allowing a genociding person in my name. No, not in my name. You've nothing to say, Phil? That's not like you.
No, I agree. Not in my name. And Orwell, I love his work. I visited his birthplace in Motahari. Birthplace.
We're losing you, Phil.
Motahari.
You're breaking up, Phil. We can hardly hear you.
In India, previously gall. So Orwell and many have predicted what's happening right now. So we've got no excuse for turning away from the evident evil unfurling before us, and what we see, what's happening in front of our eyes. So I went to the daily.
Phil, I'll come back to you, mate. You're breaking up all the time and freezing.
Okay, how about that now? Is that better?
That's better.
Move on then.
We'll come back to you. Yeah, same question to you, Alan. There seems to be a delay in the line, Phil.
Working, then we'll move on. Can you hear me okay now?
At the moment, yeah. But I think you're behind us. Alan, the red carpet for Herzog, it shames us all.
It does.
Don't know what's
how anyone...
No? How about that?
When you go,
how anyone could say it's not a genocide is beyond me. But this is not new for the British government. I mean, they appeased the Nazis for so long and allowed them to do what they did during the Second World War. So it's really no surprising. I mean, our government are spending millions, if not billions of pounds funding the Israelis as well as the people of Ukraine for bombs, when they should be trying to get these people into The Hague to stand trial for war crimes. Because that is what we should be doing. I mean, we should not be supporting anyone who is killing children and women, innocents. And it's not just happened since the Hamas took the hostages. This has been happening for decades beforehand, and people are forgetting that. When they had the ceasefire for a little while, the media kept saying Hamas was handing over hostages, Israel were handing over prisoners. They were not prisoners. They were hostages, and many of them had been held there since they were children, taken off the street by the Israeli soldiers. And it's time that this rhetoric stops, because the media are filling people's heads with total and utter bullshit.
Well, they always have.
People have got to waken up. I mean, one of the biggest problems that we have nowadays, and it comes down to social media as well, and AI. There's so many things can be done through AI that look realistic. People really have to do their own research and proper research. If it looks too good, and if there's no real evidence, if it's people saying, I have heard this and I have heard that, then go further into check it. Because a lie is a lot easier to spread than the truth. Because the truth you have to back up with evidence. And that is not happening within social media now, because those in power have managed to get their manipulation into the only place that we were able to get proper information from. They are now manipulating that information. So go deeper into the internet, search for the truth, and make sure it is backed up with evidence. And it is not just some idiot having a blog saying this is what I have been told. Because if as you've been told, then you don't know if it's true. Look at the facts, what's happening. And one of the facts that cannot be disputed is when you're watching live television and children, blooded children on flipping whatever they can get to carry them. These children are dying. That is real. The people of Palestine are being starved.
Yeah.
They're being treated like animals, and they have been for generations, and it's time for it to stop. And if anybody from Israel lands in an independent Scotland, they will be arrested and handed over to The Hague, just like other nations are now starting to say they will do. I think it was Spain who have withdrawn their diplomats, and they are making it quite clear we're going to boycott your products because you hit them in the pockets. Israeli does not like being hit in the pockets. Stop funding them. Cut them off totally from their economy, and bring them down, because someone has to. I mean, you've got people like is it Mary Magdalene, who was a great big Jewish fan. She was Jewish and promoted Jewish beliefs for so long. She's now given up her Jewish faith because people in their murderous ways, because that is not the way of the Jewish faith. And she was so disgusted.
Miriam Margolis.
Miriam Margolis, the one. She has given up Jewish faith now because she cannot have that done in her name. And we should not be having it done in our name either.
Okay. I don't know, Phil, have we managed to get a better connection back?
I think so. It should be okay now, hopefully.
Yeah. On you go.
Oh,
Do you want to have your wee bit on Herzog getting the red carpet treatment?
Absolutely. I mean, we talked about Orwell, love his stuff, and I visited his birthplace in Motihari in India. But Alan's right here. You know, what's going on is nothing short of despicable, and the Houthis are to be applauded. They're the only ones who are standing up and doing what we're empowered under law to do, to intervene when there's a genocide. There's a moral obligation for the UN to intervene, and the Houthis are the only one that are doing it. And they're getting criticised. It's appalling. So it's quite clearly, I went to the Daily Mail just to check this out, to how the establishment are reporting it. And they're not arguing with it. They're saying Israel is not committing genocide, the British government says. And it goes on to say that the UK government doesn't believe Israel's actions in the Gaza Strip constitutes genocide. It's a straight lie. And they're all saying it's the Foreign Office have done this. Foreign Office will do what they're told. It's absolutely appalling, and it was a question for the courts, according to the Labour government, not a national government. Lies. And even though there's some movement here where they're trying to pay lip service to the fact that, maybe we should think about cautioning Israel over its actions. We should be putting sanctions in place right now, and this disgusts me that the likes of Starmer, Lamy, and Cooper, who are all in the pay of the Zionist lobby, continue to allow this to go ahead, and to hell with them. They're practicing evil. Now, the red carpet, the Irish Times was great on this. Sinn Féin MP condemned the British minister for rolling out the red carpet, and it was Chris Hazard. He should be instead imposing sanctions on Israel. And really what he talked about was Keir Starmer thinks it's appropriate to roll out the carpet for the president of a terrorist state, again highlights his moral bankruptcy, because that's what it is.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing recently, they don't allow the journalists from the BBC into Gaza, obviously, to witness what's going on. But the BBC press corps over there, they're reading out IDF press releases, not even their own stuff. They're just reading out what they're told to read out by the Israelis. Disgusting. We've got to crack on because, time is getting a Guinness. But there's something I want to show you. The one thing that pleased me about Herzog's visit, he was doing the Chatham House speech, and I don't think he expected this.
He's been president of Israel since 2021, so has 3 more years to go. 60,000 Palestinians killed in Gaza as a result of Israeli military action, many of them apparently children. The UN-backed IPC saying last month it has confirmed famine and starvation in Gaza. Almost daily settler violence on the West Bank, with more settlements licensed by Israel's government. And last night, Israel's strikes against Qatar, criticised by many countries, including the US and UK. Qatar becomes the 7th country to be struck by Israel in the past year or so, along with Lebanon, Syria, Palestinian territories, Iran, Yemen, and Tunisia, including the aid flotilla. Just in the past few hours, Israel has conducted more strikes on the Yemeni capital. Many of these actions have in turn brought international condemnation and huge public protests. The UK, along with France, Belgium and Canada, is likely within weeks to recognise a Palestinian state. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen used her State of the Union speech today to announce the European Commission will sanction extremist ministers and violent settlers and pause bilateral payments. President Herzog, we have a lot to talk about.
Wish I had been there. He wasn't very comfortable with that, was he, Lloyd? Truth hurts.
No, he wasn't. I saw that clip to begin with, and then I sought out the entire interview. He got very, very. His ability to control his anger, unlike other extremist ministers in Netanyahu's government, is quite impressive in a way. But he simply rejected every single accusation on the basis of it didn't happen. It didn't happen. That's someone else's narrative. No. We wouldn't do that. We just seek peace. We just want peace. 40 minutes of a man saying, we just want peace, but then periodically saying, but they don't. The other side don't. Everyone's against us. It was quite extraordinary, absolutely astonishing. But what it is again, we talk about Itmar Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and their, the rabid anti-Arab, anti-human statements that they make. But what's more chilling is when you have someone like Herzog, who simply rejects reality. He will not accept any criticism whatsoever. Everything is everybody else's fault. Maybe he should join the Scottish Green Party. Maybe he would fit in there, with this complete denial of reality. But I mean, it was worth it. It was worth 40 minutes just to watch, to get a window into the minds of the senior politicians in Israel. They are a product of their own society. They are not unusual. Herzog is not unusual. In actual fact, he's probably what would be termed a moderate, not just amongst the politicians. That is it's a window into the Israeli society. It has become so utterly and completely obsessed with its own righteousness that it cannot see the wood for the trees. It cannot see that what its actions are a complete attack on the basic principles of humanity and international law. And it's horrific in real terms.
Yeah, there's an irony. Herzog was born in Belfast, would you believe? A Northern Irish boy, incredible. But they touched on that video, Eva, on the attack on Doha. Now, this was a peace negotiation. And just like when the Americans had encouraged in the Iranians, then the Israelis hit it when fortunately the negotiators were out the room at the time having their prayers, apparently who had been tipped off by the Turks that it was about to happen, not by the Americans who'd invited them there. But this is what I found disconcerting. I don't know if you saw this one, guys, but apparently the whole time the Israelis were attacking, a refueling Royal Air Force plane was circling Doha and then landed back down in Doha after fueling the Israeli Air Force planes. If that's true, it's horrific. We've taken part in a breaking international law, Eva.
This is the time when that phrase, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, it is so difficult to figure out. He gets on with him, but she doesn't get on with that one, and it's such a tangled web. Yep. There is a very, very, very tiny little ray of hope, though, because the UN Security Council has obviously condemned these strikes, but they've been mealy-mouthed because the statement is backed by all 15 Security Council members, including the US, which normally blocks actions against Israel. However, the condemnation has failed to name Israel. So it says, Council members underscored the importance of de-escalation and expressed their solidarity with Qatar. The statement was drafted by the UK and by France. So if it's right that UK planes were there or thereabouts, then the level of hypocrisy is absolutely earth-shattering. But that is where we appear to have got to. The world needs such a clean-out. I think it was our friend Rab Dixon. I saw him tweeting earlier on about how he grew up in the era of, the aftermath of JFK and the mistakes that were made by a lot of the big beasts thereafter. And the most that we can do in the world, in the state that it is today, in essence, is to threaten to withdraw from the Eurovision Song Contest. Is that the level of opprobrium that we've actually got? Who is the gatekeeper? In respect of restoring peace to the world? It's meant to be the UN. We're meant to have functioning democratic and judicial organisations and arms in the context of criminal courts and international criminal courts, etc. But who the hell is actually sufficiently important and committed and honest to make these systems and processes work? Because good men and good women these days in positions of power seem very few and far between.
Yeah, it's quite right after going our first item again. Charlie Kirk was barely shot. I think just been pronounced dead when Netanyahu informed the world that the shooter was a Muslim Islamist extremist who had shot him, which of course proved to be another lie. These people lie at will, Phil. I mean, I saw that the fact is that the biggest airbase in the Middle East that the Americans have is in Doha. Now, I'm not a military man, none of us here are. However, that will be brimming with radars and God knows what else. And if something, because it was proved later, these planes crossed Saudi, they crossed Jordan to get to Doha, but there wasn't a shot fired, there was nothing happened, they got there. Then the following day, the Yemenis sent one across Saudi and the Saudis shot it down, the one that was going towards Israel. And yet they're saying, oh, we're against this. We will stand with Qatar, but they're actually standing with Israel. It's all crooked. You're muted, mate.
How's that? Better?
Yep,
There we
yep.
go. Right, the US and the UK knew in advance, right? And the USA sanctioned this. They also ensured that there was no. They also ensured that there was no friendly aircraft in the skies around Doha at the time, because it is the biggest airbase. I lived in Qatar several times, worked for Qatar Petroleum, and know the place well. This base is, as you say, the biggest. There's plenty of flights in and out, and what had to be done. There's something else. There are senior US military stationed permanently in Israel's war headquarters to ensure the US doesn't get surprises from the rogue state that is Israel. Israel is the US attack's dog in the Middle East, and the role of the UK airbase in Cyprus plays a key role in all of this illegality. It cannot be underestimated or understated. And this is Israel. Israel has attacked 6 countries in the past 72 hours. In just 3 days, Israel's carried out strikes in Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Tunisia, Qatar, and Yemen. And the 7th since the start of the year. Hamas reported on this attack. Its leader survived the attack, but that 5 lower-ranked members were killed, and Qatar said a security official died and others were wounded. Israel said, we'll get them next time. As we've said, and everybody knows,
impunity.
Continue blatantly ignoring international law. They flout it with impunity. But the big news here for me, and I'll be brief on this, Qatar confirms hosting emergency Arab Islamic summit after the Israeli attack. Now, Doha is to convene this, the leaders on the September 15th. Get ready for another attack. After that one. And Qatar confirmed that this is an emergency summit on response to the recent Israeli attack. And what they're looking to do is to pull all of these Arab states together. And this is what terrify the West. This is significant because most of these billionaire leaders are in the pockets of the US Israel lobby, and a unified cause. And so you can look at UAE, Qatar, Turkey, and Egypt, all in the pockets, all billionaires, all doing the West bidding. But the world is changing. And like the people of the West, the people of these countries are becoming more and more hostile to the West, understandably under the circumstances. And not just the West, but their own leadership. People power, unification is the primary conduct of change. Long may it continue. There and in Scotland.
Sorry. And on that, yesterday, this is... We've come to the end. It's been, again, we've overshot the runway on this. Can I thank you all? I hope you have been watched, have enjoyed this as much as we've enjoyed talking to you. And until we see you again, you and yours, take care.
Through a Scottish prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.